welcome everybody. We're going to start in just a minute, but we're just going to give another minute for people to arrive. And I think, Vanessa, is the stream on? Okay, so we have people streaming from a distance. So welcome to all of you who are somewhere else and watching us. So we are waiting for those intrepid folks who actually got into cars and drove over to get here. So we'll give them another minute to do so. In the meantime, I tell you about some upcoming things. So Pizza in the Hut this Friday evening, right, to celebrate Sukkot. And on October 20th, which is the Sunday during Sukkot, you're all invited to Saillands in my home in Deerfield. So we have an open house in the afternoon for a couple of hours. So you can drop by just for a few minutes if that's all the time you have, or you can come and hang around with us and enjoy some goodies. And see the sukkah, which was built by our teens this past Sunday in my yard. We had 20 teenagers in the yard, and some adults came and built a very nice sukkah, and so hope you'll come and see it. And in the morning, is it that day? So we still have some space for the adult enrichment field trip to the Holocaust Museum in Skokie. So if you aren't already signed up and you'd like to sign up, see Vanessa after the program, and there's still some room for that. And Yisker is Thursday morning, right? So next Thursday morning here in our sanctuary, we're sharing it with Congregation Hakafah, as we usually do. But so at 10:30 in the morning on Thursday at the end of Sukkot Simchat Torah, that will be Yisker. So I think we should get started. It's my great delight to introduce Tal Schneider to all of you who are here and watching from a distance. Tal is a political correspondent for the Times of Israel. And if you aren't already looking at that website to get news about what's going on, of course, in the everyday, in the political world and the war and everything else, I mean, it's a great website for that information. It's also a pretty great website to get an insight into what Israelis are thinking about, not only about the war, about life in general, you know, about their political situation, about arts and culture and all sorts of other things. So it's really a great website. It should be on your short list of things to look at when you're looking at for stuff about what's going on in Israel. So Tal is a terrific writer and a wonderful journalist and just an all-around nice person who's a joy to spend time with. So it's my honor to introduce Tal Schneider to you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, I think, for the second time. So I'm thankful for all of you who got here and for people who are watching from the houses. Let me just say, I cannot move away from the mic because otherwise they won't hear me on the broadcast. So I'm stuck here. Won't be moving too much, but hopefully it will be okay to correspond just like that. I'll talk for a bit. And then we, afterwards, after I'll talk, we can open it for question and answers, because I know usually with Israel there's so many questions and everything is so complicated, and I'm very, very happy to have a discussion. If some of you want to move ahead, it's going to be even better. I'm the political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel. I also was, so I have to do it. Okay, I did it. It's moved, right? What just? Someone called me?
Toda.
But I have a guess whom that might be. Yeah. Okay, that was my brother. Sorry, he lives in Irvine.
Can you try this microphone?
Yeah. Oh, much better. And I can move. Okay, so So I'm the political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel, and I was DC correspondent for 5 years for Ma'ariv newspaper, an Israeli newspaper. And then we went back to Israel in 2009, and I started to work writing for Globe's business newspaper, and afterwards the Times of Israel. But my work with the Times and with other outlets was as a diplomatic correspondent, we get to spend time with Israel's prime minister. I will do like that, sorry. So we get to spend time with Israel's prime minister, meaning we are traveling with him back and forth to the United States, both the Israeli prime minister and the president, Herzog. So I spent, lots of time with the group that's surrounding the prime minister, covering him, and I also get to meet, not in person, of course, but as a correspondent, with President Biden, with Secretary Blinken, and before that, since the time of Bush, by the way, which was the first president I met, and so on and so forth, Trump, and now during the campaign, obviously we are covering this also, but it's interesting. It's a very tense time, as you all know, and you all been following the news. It's a very difficult time in Israel. I wanted to talk about, strategic and geopolitical issues, but also a bit of a social issues. So bear with me. I will explain things, and then we can open it for question and answers. Let me just hold on. I think it's the phone call to be blamed, my brother. Okay, very good, it's working. So the first issue is Israel's defense strategy. As you all know, Israel's defense strategy was crafted and written in 1953 by Ben Gurion, the first prime minister. And he defined Israel, the way that Israel should defend itself against all of the surrounding very hostile environment with deterrence, warning, and resolution. It means that you have to deter the enemy, and you have to have enough of a warning, which means you have to have really good intelligence. And then you have to come to a resolution. You have to finalize things. When you think of this war specifically, of the 2024 war, then, deterrence, obviously, we did not have the deterrence in place. The intelligence, we had the intelligence of what the Hamas is planning, but I'm talking about this October 7th massacre, but obviously, Israel did not take seriously the intelligence and resolution, finalizing, getting to a conclusion of the war. We're not even close. It used to be, when Ben Gurion written all of those rules, he said Israel's wars should be short, quick, short, should not be extended. They should take place on the enemy's territory, not on Israel's territory. Obviously, on October 7th, 22 villages, kibbutz, and cities were conquered by the Hamas terrorists for about 36 hours. So I think it's the first time in Israel's history ever that the war was taking place on our territory and not on the other's territory. And you need to have a world power backing. That's very important. We have the United States with us, even though there are some strains and some problems, but basically we do have that. But we are very much concerned in Israel that we are losing it in a very fast pace. So this was the concept of Israel's strategic security, and it hasn't changed since 1953. No other prime minister wrote a new Israel's defense strategy. They never wrote it. It just remained the same. through the years, there was discourse. What do we need to do in order to change? As you can see, Meridor, who was a minister, offered in 2004 we should enter into the Israel's defense strategy in a written manner, defensiveness, meaning it has to be a core companion of your defense strategy. How do you defend your own? And I'm going back to October 7th. A year ago, obviously, the massive failure was in defending the Israeli people, because as you all know, 1,200 were killed or murdered that day, and 250 were taken captive. And as I said, the entire region was under the control of the Hamas terrorists. So defensiveness was, just remained a written concept. It was never entered into the way that you protect the Israeli people. In 2018, Prime Minister Netanyahu conducted again a discussion of how to change Israel's defense strategy, and he offered to enter two more concepts: cybersecurity and missile defense. It was just a discourse, just ideas floating out, but they never changed it. It remained the same as in 1953. This is Israel's defense strategy up until today. Now, can you bring it up a little bit? You see the slide? You can't really see it, because the thing that I wrote at the bottom is really, really important. Okay. Oh, no, not too much. That's it. Yep, thank you. So this is really an important line. I entered that, and this is the reason I want to open my talk, my conversation with that. One of the big, there is another discussion in Israel these days about how do we need to change the written, the commitment to Israel defense strategy, and what everybody's been saying, and this is not me, this is, the Israel's president is saying that, ministers are saying it, think tanks, researchers, public opinion makers, they all say it. American jury, the jury around the world, but basically it's an American jury, has to be written in Israel's defense strategy as an asset, as a defense asset. This is not just friendship. This is not just, solidarity. It's not just help and assistance or, again, friendship. It has to be a security asset for the state of Israel. I mean, it's been proven right again and again, and it has to be written in. So this is one of the interesting component of our time. Obviously, we don't know if someone is going to sit down and write the defense strategy, as they haven't done so since 1953, but it has to be written, and it's been talked about. Okay. Let's make sure. Okay. I wanted to present to you the timeline, because people are not fully aware of what is going on with us since October 7th. So this is basically the numbers. You can see on October 7th, that's the first box up there. On that day of Simchat Torah, it was the last day of Sukkot, where people are still, sitting in the Sukkah for the last day. On that day, we had the horrific massacre with the numbers, as you can see, 1,200 murdered, 250 kidnapped, but I wanted you to look at the 13,200,000 rockets. 13,200 rockets shot on Israel since October 7th, 23, from Gaza only. And the number is updated to probably a week ago. Since then, probably we had a couple of more, but not too much, because Gaza is right now not functioning anymore as a terrorist organization. The Hamas is not functioning anymore as a terrorist organization. But through the year, can you imagine to yourself 1,300,000, and I'm saying the number right, 1,300,000 rockets, most of them in the first 6 months. Then on October 8th, the following day, it was a Sunday, the Hezbollah in Lebanon started to shoot in rockets on Israel. Like Hamas, unprovoked. We had no war with them. For 18 years, there was nothing coming on from this border, the northern border, nothing completely, up until summer of 2022, where the Hezbollah shot 30 rockets on one day. but this was one day on 2022, and it never happened since then. Then, since the beginning of the war on October 8th, 13,000 rockets shot through that year. It doesn't include the last couple of days. It means it's by hundreds. The number is up by hundreds, at least 400 or 500 since then. So this was second day of the war. Israel could not deal with that at the moment because, they evacuated the people. They were concerned for another massacre coming from the north, so they evacuated the entire region of 200,000 people were evacuated from their homes. And as you can see, 23 civilians killed from rockets. It's actually, the number is up by now. And 30 soldiers, this is already, unfortunately, it's around 40 or 45 by now, and just from the last week or so. And the rockets were UAV, this is drones, rockets, anti-tank missiles, and 1,200 houses are completely in ruins in the northern area, but also not just in the northern area. Then on October 19th, exactly a year ago, the Yemenite, the Houthis, decided to join in. Now, believe me, the Israelis were opening Google Maps, and they were like, where is Yemen? I mean, of course we know where it is, it's down south, but really, it's not a country we have, we didn't have anything with them, never. So basically, people needed to figure out where this is coming from. And since October 19th, they shot, it's 1,000 miles away. Since then, they shot 180 ballistic missiles, long-range drones, and they managed to cause one person to die in Tel Aviv. The drone just flew all the way, and then it's just like flew like this from the south. Then it made a right turn into Tel Aviv from the beach, and it killed one person who was sleeping in his bed. On October 24th, Syria IRGC, this is the Iran Revolutionary Guards Corps. That's the acronym. They joined in, and they shot from Syria, from the area of the Golan Heights, about 60 rockets since then. And then on November 3rd, who would have thought, Iraq joined in. And this is not, by the way, both in Yemen and in Syria, and then in Iraq, this is not local people. This is Iranian-backed militias all over the place. It's people from Iran or paid by Iran, identified with Iran, and they started the shooting rocket on November 3rd, 650 miles away, very, very far. Again, 50 cruise missiles and drones, and 2 soldiers died out of that. That happened like a month ago. And on April 13, I'm sure you've been following, April 13, and then again on October 1st, just 10 days ago, 200 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and then on October 1st, 200 ballistic missiles. If you look up my latest article in the Times of Israel, I discussed the latest October 1st rocket attack of ballistic missiles. There wasn't a big discourse in Israel about that, but they actually managed to, it was not intercepted. 200, out of 200, we don't know the exact number, but between 30 to 40 were not intercepted. For long-range missiles, you don't use the Iron Dome, where everybody heard about the Iron Dome. You have to use a different system called Arrow or THAAD, an American-developed, an Israeli and American-developed system, and it doesn't intercept everything. Plus, it's to intercept one ballistic missile cost around $1 million. So they say to themselves, we can have in the Air Force base, we can have the tarmac ruined. We can fix it in 20,000 shekels and not use $1 million interceptor. So many of those ballistic missiles just were showering on us, including very close to my house in a place called the Mossad, which you all have heard probably. It's about 2 miles away from my house, and it was not hit directly, but the surrounding, the entry, actually, the entry circle was hit. So this is just the timeline, as I said. And by the way, of course, the seventh front is the West Bank, where we have terror every day. I put it like with a little mark down there because this happened even before the war. So it's not war, it's not just war related. So what I just described to you is it's the Iranian defense strategy. They don't call it Iran defense strategy, they call it Iran Ring of Fire. If you can see on this map right here, you see Tehran up there, and then you see an arrow going all the way down to Yemen, the round arrow. This is the way they bring the missile to Yemen, and then they shoot the missile. You see this long purple arrow coming from south to north. And then you have from Iraq, from Iran, from Lebanon and Syria. So you see this ring of fire surrounding Israel from all sides. This is where we're at. And if you look at this other map, it's a closer map right here. Then I added here the Gaza Strip. It's so small, you cannot really see it up on the big map. So we had, as I said, 1,300 rockets, 1,300,000 rockets. I hope I'm saying the numbers right. From Gaza Strip and from Syria and from Lebanon. So this is the closed-in ring of fire, and this is the big ring of fire. And oops, sorry. Okay. So what about the hostages? I didn't mention them yet. I will go now talk a little bit about Israel's atmosphere and mood of the people. You know, all of you probably know the words manishma, right? You're all familiar with this idiom. So in Israel this day, when you meet a person on the street, usually we used to do manishma, how are you, right? So we don't do it anymore. Because when you ask someone manishma, and he has to say, yofi, akol tov, akol sababa, akol beseder. No one can answer that anymore. So these days, when people ask manishma, they answer, on the personal level, I am okay, or maybe not, but you know, most of them are okay. But then on the national level, I'm very, very bad. In Hebrew, there's another saying, it's shlomi keshlom ami. The way I feel is as my people feel, which is very bad. And the main reason for that is actually the hostages, because this is 101 people who were kidnapped from their houses, from their beds on a Saturday morning, on a Shabbat, Simchat Torah, and they are being kept in Gaza, in the dungeons, in the tunnels of Gaza, without daylight, with barely of food. And I think all polls, if you look into the polling of Israel, all polls suggest that it was about 65%, or 60 to 65, sometimes higher than that, sometimes 70% of the people, they want to see the hostages back above everything. They're willing to get the military out of Gaza. They're willing to release murderers who were convicted in Israeli courts. They're willing to do many more things. They are willing to go into demonstrations or donate money. And as long as they get the hostages out, this is the main focus of so many people. The problem is that the government is not really listening to the polls and to the public discourse. And there is also an atmosphere that the government is not doing enough to get them out. It's not even me saying it, it's all over the news. If you read Israeli news, you know that every poll suggests that people think that the government is taking political consideration and not life-saving consideration to take the hostages out. So there is kind of this disconnect between the people and the government. But obviously, the country, as a society, cannot move on as long as we are. We will be stuck. We are unable to get out of move on with anything as long as this issue is still the case. And by the way, IDF announced 44 out of these 101 that are already dead. So we're talking about a humanitarian issue of remains of people who were were held by the terrorists. Some of the remains were kidnapped as remains, murdered and kidnapped, and some of them were murdered in captivity. This goes to show you another issue of the society, which is hardly talked about in the media, because we know, I'm watching the world news media outlets. They talk mostly about what's going on in Lebanon and in Gaza, but they hardly show you what's going on in Israel. As I said, there were 200,000 internally displaced people to begin with. We are now down to about 60,000 to 70,000 internally displaced, meaning people who are evacuated from their homes. You can call it refugee if you want. They are living in hotels, in very small rooms all over the country, cannot go back to their homes because this is the way their communities look like. So in the middle, it's Metula. If you've ever been there, it's an ancient village right on the border. The village is, it's probably about 5,000 people of a village. It's about 75 ruined. So this house, probably, most of the houses look like that in Metula. The village is ruined to the ground. You have to rebuild the entire village, including public, the arena, and there is this very famous ice rink out there. It's the northern part of Israel. This is Kibbutz Be'eri. I know the rabbi has been there, visited there. It's also, not all of the kibbutz, but probably at least a third of the kibbutz looks like that. Houses are in shambles. And this is Kiryat Bialik. This is just a suburb of Haifa. It's not even close to the border, but it's all been ruined by the missiles and drones. So you have about 1,500 houses ruined all over Israel. About 14 red communities, meaning communities like Metula or Be'eri that you can completely, they're out of, the community is empty. There's no living there at the moment until it will be rebuilt. Kiryat Bialik, by the way, it's not the case. This is just one street, but it's not the entire community. And so 45 cities and villages evacuated. Kiryat Shmona, it's a city of 50,000 people. It's completely evacuated. And no, it's smaller than 50,000 because I said there's 60,000 evacuated altogether. And as I said, 60,000 internally displaced people. So this is the situation all over the country. Be'eri is in the south, Metula is really in the upper north, and Kiryat Bialik is just a suburb of a city. It's not a big place, but it's not. And here I just wanted to show you the vast of the massacre. People don't really understand the area where the massacre took place is really big. You can see in the left-hand side, the communities in red, the red dots. By the way, there's this website called October7thmap.com where you can see each dot. You can enter that and see each dot. So if you look at the left side, this is, all of those dots are places where the massacre took place. So this is places where people were murdered or tortured or raped or kidnapped. When it's all around Gaza Strip, and it's 45 miles. If you go from the top on the beach up there, from the left upside, it's Zikim area, all the way down to where it says Rafah. This is the border between Israel, Egypt, and Gaza. This is 45 miles of a spread of an area. It's a very big area. I think it's from here to Chicago, right? This is about 40 miles or even a little bit less. I'm not sure. But, you can understand, how big it is. And you have the names of the communities on it's the same map, just with the names. And here, this is Kibbutz Nir Oz. It's a very small community of less than 400 people. And if you can see, there is this kind of a yellowish bright color. Up there, it's the last little square. It's like the yellowish bright color. If you can look it up on the map, it's used only 6 times. It is houses that were not torched, no one was murdered, no one was raped, no one was kidnapped. Only in 6 houses out of the entire kibbutz. The kibbutz is less than 400 people, more than about 110, so almost a third, were either murdered or kidnapped. So 2/3 of the community remained. Obviously, the entire place is, as I said, red communities. There's, 6 houses left untouched from the entire community. So this place is like ground zero. It's the worst affected place. It's called Kibbutz Nir Oz. It's right on, when you look up here in the middle map, it's like, can you see Nir Oz massacre right in the middle? This is where it is. Okay, so this is my son, kind of using my connection with him to put him on the slides. I didn't say it at the beginning. I have 3 kids. My eldest is Omri. He's 23 years old, and he's an officer in the paratroopers, and he was 5 months in Gaza. And as you can imagine, I have my second daughter is also a soldier, but she was not in Gaza, at least that. And as you can imagine, me and my husband, we went through a really rough time during those months. And I put up this slide because I wanted to explain to you something that is really hard to understand when you are not maybe meeting or speaking to Israelis. And this is how the Israeli has changed, how the society in Israel is now heavily traumatized, as you can imagine, and how things have changed for the people. And so, for example, first few months, there were lots of missing people from the massacre, and people were just looking for their relatives. You may recall that atmosphere from September 11th, when people were walking in the streets with photos of their loved one, looking for them. So that was the same for us, looking for people. It took a long time to identify some of the bodies or, understand who is kidnapped and who is not. And so 600 kids lost their parents, 250 widows. Some of the kids lost both parents at the massacre. And, there's this famous set of twins, or there's Abigail that was invited to the White House to meet Joe Biden. She lost 2 of her parents. Her father was murdered when holding her, and then she was kidnapped with the neighbors. She fell from his hands running to the next door neighbors, the Brodets family, and was kidnapped with Brodets and 3 of her kids. So she spent she's just 3 years old. Her brother and sister were hiding in the closet next to their mother's remains. And she, as I said, was with her father on his hands. He was a journalist working for Ynet and was running outside to shoot some of the occurrences. And when they killed him, and so she lost both her parents. She now lives with uncles, and so many kids. We have many kids that became orphaned by this horrible war. We have 10,000 new war disabled. This is mostly soldiers that were wounded on battle, but also people that were wounded on the massacre. And that's, 10,000. It's a small country. Israel is just 10 million. It's 10,000 new people with disabilities. That changes the entire public sphere. People are, walking around with, amputees? Amputees. And it came to the point right now where even commercial advertisers, are doing ads with amputees to show the new normality of Israel's public sphere. And I wrote, many people lost friends and relatives, and I will mention my son, for example, who lost many of his, people he knew during battle, or people he was in officers course with, or people he just knew from high school. One of the really good friends of his his mother was murdered in the Nova Festival, music festival, even though she was not young. She was 46, but some people, most of the people were young, but she was just 46. She went to party, it was a holiday, and this is a childhood friend. And when on the Saturday of the massacre, my son was called in for the military, and we didn't know she was murdered at the time. This is a childhood friend and a neighbor living in the neighborhood. And he was called on, and then he was in Gaza for 5 months, and he couldn't even pay a visit, not to the Shiva, not to condolences. He didn't have his phone. He could hardly even text the friend. And I'm just saying, it's like he missed everything. So this is a mother of a childhood friend, but also some of his friends from the military were killed. I mean, he never got to go to pay his respects. He missed the funerals. I was, because of the situation, when he was able to talk to us, he said, "Would you go to the funeral on my behalf and just say that you are Omri's parents and you apologize that I cannot be there?" So we did that. Me and my husband, we went to probably 10 funerals of people we don't know, just in order to say to someone, we are here on Omri's behalf. And then I took photos of those funerals so I can show it to him. It's really weird stuff. I mean, I never experienced anything like that. And when he was out of Gaza, I told him one day, let's go visit the Uzan family where the mother was murdered. And he said, it's weird. I mean, they finished the Shiva, and they finished the Shiva 5 months ago. What are we going to do there? And I said, let's do it. It's like a closure for you. You need to pay respect. You need to feel. So we went there. Obviously, there was no one there, just us. And it was very, very weird and did not provide him with the proper way he wanted to see things. So he missed lots of Shivas. And then there is the issue of the double funerals. And I'm sorry to be just a little bit of a graphic here, but it's really a matter of halakha. Because a relative of us, a far relative, not a close relative, was a soldier and was murdered on October 7th. I did not go to his funeral, but my husband did. But the problem is that his remains were kidnapped, and they were in Gaza. And the chief military rabbi came to the parents around November 30th, about a month and a half into the massacre, and told him, we have proofs that he was murdered. You have to sit Shiva. I mean, you don't have to, but we recommend that you sit a Shiva and you conduct a funeral. So did you ever ask yourself, how do you conduct a funeral without a body? They conducted the funeral without the body, without the remains. They buried something, which was like a belonging of him, and the parents sat Shiva. Then on May of 2024, military recovered the body from Gaza. So for the second time, a knock on the parents' door. They came up to them and said, we found the name of the soldier is Tomer Achimas. We found Tomer, and you can now conduct a funeral and a Shiva. But, the parents already did a funeral and a Shiva. And what do you do? Do you do the entire eulogies again? Do you bring 500 people more for the second funeral? Do you sit a Shiva again? This is questions for halakha, which I think rabbis in Israel, I don't know if they had to figure it out before. So they did it. I mean, I think this family specifically, they left it wide open. Everybody can make their own decisions. This family specifically they made another funeral, but they didn't do another Shiva, a formal one. But people came to their house, any house, to grieve them. And this is not just them. Some people who were kidnapped from Be'eri or from Kfar Aza or from the kibbutz on the area, they could not conduct funerals in those places. As I showed you, Nir Oz was completely burned and the area was a military closed area. So the residents of Nir Oz could not conduct funeral to their murdered people in the kibbutz. So they buried them in a temporary burial in Shfa'im and Revivim and other places. But this one woman, whose name is Karmit Palti Katsir, her brother was kidnapped, her mother was kidnapped, and her father was murdered. So her father was buried in a temporary place in another kibbutz. Her mother was released after 50 days because she was one of the elderly women that were kidnapped. And her brother remained in captivity and then was murdered around January. And the military was able to bring back his remains. And when they brought back his remains, she said, I'm going to move my father from Shfaim to Be'eri so the father and brother can be buried together. So basically, she conducted a second funeral for her father, a first funeral for her brother, and with a mother that is a former hostage. It's an unbelievable situation. So many people in the area, out of the 100 and the 1,200 that were living in the area, at least, dozens of them conducted second funerals when they wanted to move the bodies. So the entire Israeli society is going through this very crazy situation where you have all of this halachic question. What do you do on a second shiva? What do you do on a second burial? What do you do with the eulogies? How do you conduct the ceremony? It's really weird, and it's really taking a toll on the people. It's really traumatizing the people. And the last item on my list for the challenge of the generation, I just kind of entered myself here. This is the parental distress, because you have probably 500,000 of people who have sons and daughters serving inside Gaza and Lebanon. So you can imagine the stress and the mental implication of that situation on people. So all over, those are really troubling times. And I know this part of this lecture is not very comfortable, but I wanted, one of the things that I do here when I come to talk to people, I just wanted to let you know what is the situation for the Israeli people, what type of distress they're living on a daily basis. So as I said, Israel has changed. It's not the same country. There is the geopolitical shift. We still think that the Sunni states and Saudi Arabia may come along, not now, but maybe in a couple of years. And there is this issue of combating anti-Semitism. It's all over the news in Israel. I think it's all over the news for you. You are talking about it all the time. We are also talking about it all the time. The coverage in Israel of what's going on in US communities, Jewish communities, is intensive every day. We talk about it all the time. As I said at the beginning of my lecture, I think, and many people think that the Jewish diaspora should be part of Israel's defense strategy, and obviously this is part of it. And no more appeasement, as you all, I don't know if you know, but Israel with the leadership of Netanyahu was actually making sure the Hamas gets money. And we have now, as a society, we have huge criticism of the way that the Hamas as a terror organization was handled by the Israel's government. So this should be off the table, and it will probably be inquired when we set up inquiry. There is also the internal rift, political stagnation. There is huge criticism of this government, yet it's not going anywhere. So as I said earlier, there's a big gap between the way the people think and believe and feel and the way the government is conducted. The specific government, as you all may know, has very extreme components, not popular at all. And there is not a commission of inquiry yet. And there is a huge discord inside the Israel society on what is the way forward. How do you get out of Gaza? How do you finalize things in Lebanon? How do you finish this war? As I said earlier, war should be short, on the enemy's territory, and with a conclusion. And it seems like our government is doing everything backwards. It's long, it took place on our territory, and it doesn't seem to have any type of conclusion, and at least, but the definition of the government doesn't even want to conclude that. So there's huge criticism in Israel on that. I will skip that and maybe come back to that later because I don't want to take too much of the time. And I have to go into some bright spots. This lovely guy here is a childhood friend of my son. They went to high school together, they went to the scouts together, and they also served in the military together, being officers in the same unit of the paratroopers in parallel. They met many times in Gaza, but on February, he was hit, he was disabled, as you can see. But, I mean, this photo is from April or May. By now, he is walking, running, doing, how do you call that, you know, with his hands, I forgot the name for that. You know, weightlifting or whatever. And back on his feet and very in a vigorous way. It's really good to see him that way. He's still in the military, but he's not serving anymore. You know, I brought this photo because he's an inspiring person, and he's inspiring his friends and family and the surroundings, but he's not the only one. We have hundreds and thousands of those young people. So I think one of the brightest spots that we can talk about is Israel's young generation, the generation of ages between 18 and 25. They are amazing, they are brave, they are vibrant, they are not complaining. That's bright spot number 4, inspiring young generation. Because of the photo, I wanted to bring this up. I think another bright spot is just against the ring of fire that I presented earlier. We should see a change, regional alliance. We already saw a regional alliance. We had Jordan assisting Israel with hauling off the rockets from Iran. We have the Saudi Arabia, which is, you know, they condemn Israel day and night, but, you know, behind the scene, they are preparing for the day after. They want to be friends. Just before the war began, I was in New York with Netanyahu when he met Biden, and on that day, MBS, that's the heir to the king of Saudi Arabia, was on Fox News saying, I'm going to normalize everything with Israel. And he called Israel, Israel. He didn't even say the Zionist regime or anything like that. So that was a big step. It happened on September 19th, 2023. It will come back. I don't know when, but it will come back. Another bright spot is the amazing assistance that we get from the United States. It's really unbelievable. There will be history books written about that. And a very strong civil society. That's the part that I skipped earlier, but it's you can see the work of the people. It's just unbelievable what people are doing, from emergency acts to really creating sort of a new society, and supporting diaspora. Of course, we feel it. The amount of groups that came to Israel for that year, the people I went to lecture who came from Miami, from California, from New Jersey, from everywhere, and from Australia, and from Brazil, and from the UK. I gave like 2 or 3 lectures a week for Jewish representatives who came to the country, all with good intentions and really heartwarming embrace of the situation. So with that, I think I didn't look at the watch. Let me just check. Yeah, I talked too much. Do you want to do some question and answers, or I can go on? And you can, ask anything from the slides, or we can, we can criticize anyone if you want to criticize him or her. You can ask question about that, but I won't be shying away from anything political. I'm also a political correspondent, so yes, please. What, this one? The deficit is beyond. Yeah, what's going on with the economy? So first of all, we've been downgraded by the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, and I can't remember the other name. Moody's. Moody's, right. I'm not an economic expert, so excuse me for not being, but we've been downgraded. 2 steps down, and the amount of money that was spent on the war so far, I think it's 250 billion shekels. It's probably like half of a yearly budget of the State of Israel. I hope I'm not mistaken with the numbers. The budget of Israel is about, well, it was 500, it's probably 590, but so they had to breach the budget twice this year, in the year of 2024. They breached the budget. As you mentioned, deficit is around 8%, I think. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich was giving a commitment that the deficit will not go any point beyond 7. And he said, I give you my word, and I will buy you a bottle of whiskey if the deficit is higher. Then guess what? Now he needs to buy 10 million bottles of whiskey for each citizen. And everybody's willing to get them because, at least we can have a drink. So the situation is not good. Having said that, Israel economy is very diverse. It's not based on just one thing. For example, export and import with Turkey is gone. Gone. Just one day, they said, that's it. Turkey, and we had mutual commerce with Turkey, which was, very good. Even during very bad years of relationship, the commerce with Turkey was always amazing. The flights, the tourism, and the import of export of steel, glass, sand, even energy. And what the Turkish government did, they announced one day that it's done. It's history. They're not allowing any more import or export with Israel. But they went into the computer software of the Turkish government and erased the word Israel, such that even if a person wants to have fill a form, that's it. It's gone. No Israel anymore. So Israel did not announce that, but obviously taking, it's like they took, part of the economy, and plus, on the economy, when you have about 300,000 people enlisted to reserve duty, and they are not in the workforce, plus you don't have any Palestinian coming in as a workforce to work inside Israel. So that's about 130,000 people daily that came to work from West Bank in Israel, mostly on the building construction, some of them on agriculture. So they took out from the system 130 daily workers, another 300,000 workers who were enlisted. Then kids at the age of 18, 19, 20 were not released from the military because they got into reserve immediately. So that's another chunk of many people who were not, coming into the economy to work. And being in the military, it's not productive. It's not work. It is work, but it's not. You're not manufacturing anything. You just, so unfortunately to say, causing destruction. So you don't have that. If you look at the region, at the northern region of Israel, where I said that it was, you can look up on that map. You see the word Haifa? From Haifa all the way to the border, which is the line up there, people cannot work because they cannot get out of the houses. So, this is, as I said, 1,300,000 rockets for a year. Yesterday we had 200 rockets. So even if you're not evacuated from your house on that region, because only several villages are evacuated, but you're not evacuated, the economy on the northern part of the country is just vanished. People cannot work, they cannot go to school. So with all of this, it's, I think that 2025 is going to be really tough. And they already announced some new taxes. And I think the rating agencies will probably take the rating down another notch. I don't know to tell you exactly what will happen, but obviously it's going to affect Israel's ability to raise money and so on. Sorry, not really good.
Yeah, I know the Netanyahu government opposes a two-state solution for the Middle East. I'm curious what the view is of the Israeli public, because I think many Americans view that as probably the only long-term solution to these conflicts. But I'm really curious what the public thinks. I've read in the papers that at one time there was more support for a two-state solution, which may have been vanishing during this conflict, which doesn't bode well for the future.
So I got the first part of the two-state solution. The other part was about the second half of your question.
What does the public think about that? We know that Netanyahu doesn't, but is there any support in the public for a two-state solution? We think, I'm sorry, Randy said that seems to be the American idea that that's the way to go.
So basically, Netanyahu is running on a non-two-state solution for so many years. And he's being voted again and again and again and again. So, I mean, his platform all through the years, even if he didn't say it directly, he always hinted to that. And people were voting for him in order to make sure there is no two-state solution. So even before the war, it was really not popular concept. And when you're, the popular leader which has huge persuasive powers, keeps telling you on and on again that this is off the table. So even if people were for that solution, I think by now, so on top of that, when you add to the war, it's completely off the table. It's even unheard of, unthinkable of. It's just something that, we hear world leaders, including President Biden and European leaders, keep on saying two-state solution for so many years. But, I've attended events with Biden and even with Trump. Trump also has this plan which includes a Palestinian state. And Netanyahu was standing next to him in the White House and agreeing and endorsing that. So Trump has that plan, Biden has that plan, every world leader, every Arab leader, every Sunni leader, they all talk about it all the time, except in Israel where it's like a bubble. They say no, no, no. They never say what is the plan. They just say no to plans. And, I think it goes beyond just Netanyahu. I think it's the people also. Yep. If there aren't any question, I can, there's only also one issue, but also, yes, please. Oh, okay.
You talked about, having an ending.
About what?
Having an ending to the conflict and things like that. When is the ending? What is the ending? And, does the public in Israel have a thought process to what that is? And
so everybody knows that you cannot win wars with military power only. Every military power has to be a tool for something. So you need to have an end game. You cannot just use military power as for the use of military power. You need to know what you want. You need to define it to yourself. On October 7th, the government defined the destruction of Hamas as a goal. And they're unable to achieve that. But then a day afterwards, they added a goal of releasing the hostages after public criticism. People said, what, are you crazy? You're not defining releasing the hostages as a goal? So the government fixed that. But destruction of Hamas, it's an how do you get to that goal? When they came to do the Lebanon definition of the goals, luckily they learned a small lesson, and they did not define destruction of Hezbollah as the goal, neither the destruction of Iran as a goal, even though some people talk like that all the time. They said the goal of the war in Lebanon is to get people back to their homes, those 60,000 evacuated people in the northern part of Israel. This is the goal. This is more of a precise goal, I would say. So, but in order to reach a goal like that, in order to reach a goal of getting people back to their homes, you need to have a diplomatic tool. It's not enough to have a military tool. So none of the wars ever is going to be finished just by military. It has to have an arm of diplomatic arm. And in order to finalize the Lebanese, the Hezbollah, they say we are attached to the Hamas. We are attached to Gaza. Finish Gaza, then we'll go into a ceasefire with you. Where Israel says, excuse me, what's the connection? I mean, why do the Shia, which is a Muslim in Lebanon, why would them attach themselves to a Sunni Islamic terror organization in Gaza, which is almost destructed, but not fully destructed? I would say that in order to finish, it seems to me it might be not easier, but more achievable to finish Lebanon because we don't have hostages in there, so the military is more free to operate without killing its own people, but also, on the personal level, it's easier to finish the job over there because the definition is much more normal, and you have UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which said Hezbollah. This is a resolution from 2006. Israel now says, bring back 1701 plus. There is a plus, but 1701 plus. What is 1701? It says Hezbollah terror group has to be pushed away from the border. You can't really see it, but there is a river called the Litani River up there. It has to be pushed away up until the Litani River, which is around probably like 13 miles away from the border, some sort of. And it's already in a UN resolution. You don't have to do a new UN resolution. You just need to take the old resolution for 2006 and implement it. There's another UN resolution that applies, 1559, which says none of the Hezbollah people should be armed and so on. Just implement them. And now there is a plus. Israel says, yeah, implement those two UN resolutions. Plus, we are going to watch the border, the Israel-Lebanese border, from inside and from the other side. It doesn't mean colonizing or conquering the other side. It means military control. It means that if we see Hezbollah people coming back to the border, we will shoot them, or we will do these small operations. So it's not enough for us to watch the border from our side. We're going to watch the border from your side because we are not counting on Lebanese army and UNIFIL. So we keep the right to ourselves to just do whatever it needs to be done on the border from both sides in order to make sure that the Israeli villages are not attacked. So, combine those two UN resolutions with this additional part. If we can reach this kind of compromise, the war will end tomorrow. The only problem is that Hezbollah is controlling Lebanon, and Lebanon is not controlling Hezbollah. Hezbollah, it's a military inside the country, whereas the politicians and the diplomats of the country cannot tell them what to do. The only leadership that can tell them what to do is the Iranian leadership, and even that is not for sure. So even if the Iranian tells them what to do, now that Nasrallah is in hell, it's really hard for the Iranians to control them. They try to control them, but they also finance them. But the Lebanese government doesn't control them at all. They control the Lebanese government. So who do you deal with? Do you deal with the Lebanese government that doesn't have any effect on the military called Hezbollah? Do you deal with the Iranian leaders that, basically we don't know? They have an effect on them, but also, So, and who talks to the Iranian? We don't talk to them. The Americans don't talk to them. How do you deal with them? Would you do it through Putin? Who knows? So that's a problem.
We have our last question here, and afterwards, we do have some cookies and water, and Tal is not running out of here, so if we have some informal conversations, we're sorry our online people will miss that. So our last question, David Macklin.
I actually had two, so I have to choose. But I'll respect the educator. It seems that 3 weeks from now, right around now, the American polls are going to close. And it's very likely we're not going to know who's won our election. We don't seem to be able to choose, right? That's what the world knows.
Until when?
At least several days, but...
January 20th, are we going to know by then?
Right,
Or the
right.
Supreme Court will make a decision?
Right. But my question is, if the Israeli populace decided our election, who
If
would
the
be...
Israeli what?
If the Israeli people decided our next election, who would win?
In Israel?
No, who would win the American presidency
Oh.
if Israelis voted on it?
Oh my God, there is straightforward polls conducted in Channel 12 like 2 weeks ago. They asked the Israeli people, who do you prefer to see in the White House? It's like 65% Trump and 35% Harris. I think that's the only Western country, if you can still call us a Western country, or it's the only democratic country in which Trump is leading by far. I mean, you don't see in those numbers in any other country in Europe or Canada or elsewhere, only in Israel. As I said, I think Netanyahu has a huge persuasive power on the Israeli people, and you can really see from the way he conducts himself that he prefers Trump, and people get that. And they just influenced by him. I mean, if you would see him more friendly with Harris, you would see different numbers. But the way it's going, I think people are very influenced by him.
I agree. And we can talk about that more. We want to thank you, Tal.
Thank you. Thank you.
A great session. We all learned something this evening, I know. And, hopefully, Tal told me she has on 2 yellow ribbons because it's the 2nd year of the war. Oh, thank you. And we hope, you'll come back and there'll be more to talk about and a even more hopeful situation.
Yeah, and I hope it was not too depressing. It's difficult these times to be, to bring the positive words, but I was trying at the end to give you some bright spots that let's take it from there. Yes, of course. Thank you.